welcome back to the 6 Degrees podcast. My name is Zachary Lefebvre, and I'm your host. Thank you for joining me again as I set out to have a conversation with a variety of talented people, including musicians, small business owners, digital artists, creatives, and regular folk that all have inspiring stories and journeys. We're still pretty bare bones here, but I'm really enjoying the process of figuring out the podcast format. And look here, I got a new microphone. Every episode, I'm trying to level up, and I really appreciate the support, and I hope you enjoyed the conversations I have with each guest. In my 6 degrees, I know there are a ton of first-class humans, and I figured it would be a great way to tap into the network, hear stories from all of these talented individuals, and talk about the big plays they are making. The main goal of the podcast is to connect people, whether it be working together or just connecting with sentiments of the pod. I aim to fill these segments with fun and lighthearted conversations while diving deeper into our guests' minds. This week on the 6 Degrees podcast, we have Blake Shoemaker. Blake is an all-around creative human being that expresses himself through many mediums like painting, woodworking, DJing, and much, much more. Welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time to speak with me tonight, Blake.
Hell yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
Well, I'm really excited to talk to you here, and we have so much in common, and I'm really looking forward to diving deeper into your artistic journey. So I kind of wanted to take it back a little bit, and I'm sure we crossed paths in the world of festivals without knowing it, but I think we finally met at a Renegade when you were live painting, and I wanted to know, where did your passion for painting begin?
Man, that's kind of a tough question. It's been a long time coming. I was not what you would call a gifted artist in elementary school or any of that. Advanced math was more my side of things. And I remember being okay at drawing, and I could use a pencil and I could get an image onto paper, but as soon as I wanted to put colors on with paint, I felt like I was just like ruining it. I felt like it was either too much paint too fast, or it was too solid of colors, and I didn't think that that was something that I had in me, and I put it off for a long time. Didn't didn't have a affinity for painting until I think I separated the idea of what I want the painting to look like, and like what I can achieve, and just letting it be more of a flow and more of an expression. Um, so it's kind of more based on textures and patterns than like creating a specific image. And once I kind of let go of that attachment to achieving a specific image and going more for an expression that just lands on the page and the canvas, the wood panel, whatever you're painting, and moving forward. And then maybe you go back and you look at it, and then you can decide what you're seeing, um, as opposed to coming up with the concept beforehand and diligently creating that masterpiece, which tons of artists and painters can do and do very well. And that's not the way I paint. And I think that was where the passion actually kind of spawned, was like separating the perfection from the work. Um,
Yeah.
because I have tons of other things that I do where I plan them out and I will meticulously work for like a specific final product. But you asked about painting. So yeah, the passion for painting is something that I almost created by getting out of my own way, which can be very difficult.
Yeah, man. God, I feel that sentiment so much. I think, especially in like the landscape of like social media, especially, and definitely like the focus of this point that I want to just kind of dive into. It's like, yeah, it's so hard to get out of your own head for fear of what people might think. And sometimes I feel like, especially in creative arts, we can be our own worst enemy, or our biggest limitation is our mind. So I think that's really, how did you end up kind of, what helped you kind of like get beyond that barrier? What practice, or was it just constantly reminding yourself affirmations, or was it conscious, or how did you go about
I
kind of breaking through?
Man, it's been a really like gradual progression of determining the things that I am interested in and I'm good at, and kind of focusing on those, and then using that to come up with concepts for something. But if I think of like the first paintings that I did, it was, yeah, you know what? It's really just been slowly working at things that I know I'm good at, and and just improving. So when I decided that I wanted to do visual art, and specifically not in the digital space, I decided I wanted to make physical visual art pieces, big and small, huge and tiny. Like that was just the idea. It was like I am a maker of things, and I have I have a certain aesthetic that I know resonates with a lot of people, especially like either 90s kids or people who were, like the 90s, something about kind of my geometric stuff and my contrast and my colors brings out that sort of aesthetic. But anyways, when I made that decision to be an artist, to pursue it, I was like, okay, well, I have to get like really good at the painting and the drawing. And I started really small with a pen to paper. And I had to get good at like drawing straight lines because I knew my art was going to have a lot of straight lines and hard edges. And I had a sketchbook that was a dot grid. So it's kind of like graph paper, but it's just a grid of dots. So it's a little more plain. And I would come up with simple, usually symmetrical designs, and I would have to draw straight lines between everything just because that's what the design was. And that was what I was doing for about a year, was just a black ballpoint pen and this dot grid page, just like doing geometric doodles, but they were like the goal was like crispy, straight, so I call it a doodle, but they were really pretty precise. And just figuring out how to draw a straight line from one point to another, if it's 2 inches or if it's 1 inch, like, you can get the pen and you can like put it down to the paper and you can draw the line. And it's like pretty hard to do a straight line. And I started just like, I would like draw the line in the air like 5 or 6 or 10 times before I put the pen to the paper. So now my hand's done this specific line a bunch of times. And then I go and I draw the line. And like when it comes out straight, like the feeling is just so good. It's like, I got it. There it was. And then the next one's like a little wiggly, or I draw it a little too long. And it's like, okay, like practice. Like practice makes perfect. Don't rush. Get out of your own head. Um, and I'm forgetting what the specific question you asked me was at this point. Was it how I get out of my own way?
Yeah, like what kind of
Yeah,
what techniques you've used to kind of like get out of your way, get out of your own head, like
yeah,
stop judging yourself so much on, like, oh, what I've envisioned in my head isn't necessarily what I got on paper. But as you said, Kai, you just said like practice, practice, practice really is kind
yeah,
of like a great theme for everything in life. And I mean, it's true. Um,
yeah, yeah. So I feel like I did answer it fairly well.
yeah,
And yeah,
absolutely.
I think the fundamentals for every creative endeavor, physical endeavor, whether it's difficult or not, if you don't have the fundamentals like pretty damn dialed in, you're gonna have a worse time and a more difficult time, and you're gonna hold yourself back.
Mhm.
So like it's it's never a bad idea to do less and just keep it simple, because
Yeah.
you can always do more later. So, you know, I've so many times in the past where I would come up with these really amazing concepts and maybe get started on something, and like you realize like to pull off the idea you had, you're gonna need a lot more like tools and materials than you had at your disposal, and you're gonna need to pull out all these other resources that you haven't really looked into yet, but you know they can be done. And then it's just like roadblock after roadblock after just like hiatus after like I ran out of money. So yeah, it starts with using what you have and really dialing in the basic motions.
Yeah. Yeah. I think with anything, a strong foundation really can set you up for success. I really like what you said, like drawing the line in the air a couple times almost kind of
Hmm.
reminded me of like a golfer like stepping up to the ball and kind of like, taking those little mini practice swings before really trying to rip it. Um, but
A great analogy. Yeah.
it kind of just, yeah, it goes kind of hand in hand. But yeah, I really love those sentiments. And now that you kind of mentioned it, I kind of have seen like since we've been friends the last couple of years that you've really kind of gotten into your own style, which is really awesome. And I've seen some of your small pieces, seen some of your larger pieces, like the one that you made for PG Squirt House. Um, but I really love all the geometric designs. I myself like the 6 degrees is kind of like my logo is kind of like a flower of life. So I don't know why I naturally gravitate towards geometric stuff, but I really, really love the fact that you are starting to like develop a style around
Mhm.
geometric sequences and designs. Do you feel like that is like something that you'll continue doing? Like, is that where you kind of feel like your style is heading, or is this kind of like just a fun new experimental phase? Or do you think it's something that might just kind of like continue to be included in all your like in future paintings and stuff?
Yeah, I think that's really kind of my aesthetic. And I will often call it abstract geometric.
Mhm.
Um, Almost never symmetrical. A lot of sacred geometry and
Mhm.
everything is like perfect and symmetrical. And that gets back to the sentiment of like how hard it is to achieve the perfect image that you have in your head, and me just choosing to let things flow the way that they will come out, with with myself as the guide that I'm steering this artistic expression, but I don't know what it's supposed to be. So therefore it's kind of allowed to like grow on its own as it happens. Which that ties into all projects, as a builder, carpenter. um, in the real world, the canvas is kind of like the real world, but building a physical structure, there's always little curveballs and things don't line up the way you thought, or like you cut something too small and you don't have enough material to just make a new one. Like you need to be open to the idea of it getting a little bit wrong, so that way it's not like this huge problem when something isn't exactly what it was supposed to be. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, how do we move forward?
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's, I mean, wow. Yeah, I think that can be applied to a lot of things in life, kind of like ridding yourself of the perfection so that things can take shape the way that they would happen naturally. And like the challenges and little hiccups or whatever sometimes just guide you to making something even greater than what you imagined in your head.
hmm And yeah, I do think that this is my style, and things will change, of course, as they do. But I imagine that in a couple decades, my art will still somewhat resemble the original roots of it. Um,
Mhm.
it might even still just be a field of triangles most of the time. That's kind of like my shape. And right now, most of my pieces have these just kind of free form, almost isosceles triangles. but I just map them out on the page real quick and draw 3 lines, and there's a triangle, and then I put another one, and then I put another one, and I just kind of space them out for the balance that I feel is right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's kind of about a balance and contrast, and yeah, I will just continue to develop upon my current style.
I love that, and I love that you said decades from now. So I'm happy to hear.
Yeah, fuck
I'm
yeah.
happy to hear you're planning to stick with it. I know
Oh yeah.
it's clear to see that it, like creative expression and art in general kind of runs deep in your veins. So, and that actually
Yeah.
kind of goes right into my next question. It's clear that you have oh, spilled my water or bottle.
Oh shit.
Not the entire
Okay.
water, just the bottle.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but it's clear that you have a deep affinity for art, creating it and experiencing it, and you've explored many different artistic expressions like woodworking, DJing, and more. Can you take us through your timeline as an artist, like where you started, what you were messing with first, and like what you are focusing more on now?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It has been quite a progression. There was not like a pivotal moment that I can point to. There are some experiences and events that kind of opened my eyes to the possibilities. I'll probably touch on some of those. But throughout school, I just kind of would maybe doodle in my notebooks a little bit because school is boring. And I was okay with like, a pencil and an eraser. I could like pull off a decent drawing. A lot of times, what I would do is I would put my left hand into a position like a shaka or a thumbs up, or I would be like holding a pencil. So I'd look at my hand and then I would draw it. And I was using that eraser a lot for sure. And eventually trying to get like a pretty perfect outline of my hand. And I would also do kind of graffiti style text. So that was a little more kind of free form, kind of flow. Obviously, letters have specific components to make that letter, but I'm not looking at a reference and copying it. I was more coming up with my own kind of lettering, and then you do the outline, and then you do the shadow, and then you start just kind of adding all the little um, fun, fluffy stuff around it. And then I would have these little graffiti things kind of on my notebooks. And then um, I kind of wanted to do graphic design when I was applying to colleges. And my dad said no. He said, "You're going to be an engineer." And he was paying for my school. My parents had a college fund for me. And I certainly am really glad that he pushed me the way that he did into engineering. I went to San Diego State for construction engineering and management. Um, and while I was in school, or while I was a freshman, I had a roommate that was in graphic design. And I was like a little bit jealous of some of his projects that were like, make a poster, like design some art. Um, and I was doing very little art myself. I was joining a fraternity and smoking weed and going to class and, doing kind of the normal college things. And then um, in the fraternity, we threw a lot of big parties. And they would almost always be theme parties, and we would build all these custom little stage platforms and paint them with all these art for the theme and everything. Um, so I pretty quickly became one of those people building these stages. Um, and they would actually call me stage maker because I'm shoemaker. So that was like my little nickname in the fraternity. I remember for one party we had that was the theme was supposed to be like club space in Ibiza. I think I built 13 of these stages that were like spread out throughout the chapter room and in some of the other little rooms and some shit in the backyard. So that was when I really started. I had built some things with my dad. My dad's a carpenter builder. His dad's a carpenter builder. It's certainly in my blood. And that's why in the fraternity, I was drawn right to it. Give me the skill saw, give me the drill. Like, I can build this shit. It was right in my wheelhouse. And as I was going through college, I was getting more into electronic music. Um, Prior to that, I was listening to alternative and jam bands and punk, and sometimes just like whatever people were playing. But I was more into live music, kind of funky stuff. And man, like the mainstream EDM that was playing in like 2011 to 2014, Skrillex and Zed's Dead and all that, playing in the fraternity. It didn't necessarily speak to me or anything, but that was the electronic music I was exposed to for a while. And it wasn't really like pulling me into the music scene until a buddy of mine from the fraternity was trying to get me to start listening to house music. And I remember like I went to my first Coachella because Rancid and Gary Clark Jr. were on the lineup. Totally non-electronic um, music artists. And while I was there, I stopped by the Do Lab stage because I had heard so many good things. And I think Amtrak was playing, who I had heard some Amtrak and I thought it was pretty good, like some deep house.
Hmm.
And I remember thinking the set was like boring, like it wasn't changing. And I was like, man, like how do people like listen to this for so long? And to get back to kind of the art thing, eventually I found myself going to CrossFest and running into a bunch of friends, and I'm in the crowd and I'm in the circle of my friends and I'm not even facing the DJ, and I'm like having a great time. And I'm like, oh, I think I get it. Like, it's not a show, it's a party. And the
Yeah.
DJ is just playing the tunes and keeping the vibe going. And if you sit there and you're trying to like listen and watch, the things are changing slowly, and the transitions are, especially in house music, the transitions are often smooth and gradual. So you let the music carry the vibe and you just kind of enjoy where you're at.
Yeah.
So
It's,
after,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, okay. So yeah, after going to, big festival, Coachella, smaller festival, Crossed, and I also went to Symbiosis Gathering in 2016. And that's a lot more of a transformational festival,
Hmm.
big creative looking stages with no branding. So between like those three experiences, I figured out that I definitely want to be in the music and art world, and I I want to be building. I was pretty sure I wanted to build big art installations, and that's still the goal. I have built some fairly big art installations, not Coachella scale. Those are like some of the biggest, most impressive things I've seen. Um, so I go to those three events, and throughout this time, I hadn't started drawing like the exercises I was talking about, where I was like, I want to become a visual artist. I'm going to start with the fundamentals. I hadn't hit that point yet, but I knew I wanted to build big things. And eventually, maybe 2017, shortly after that, a friend of mine brought me to like a little party in the desert. And it was just thrown by like a group of people in San Diego. And you probably know Stacy, SD Collective.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So she threw this one night camp out in like Anza Borrego. And it was kind of like an invite only thing, I think. And my buddy was invited and he was allowed to bring a friend. And he brought me out and he's like, dude, I think this thing is like totally your vibe. He's like, I'm gonna go check it out, but I think it's like this is your like kind of scene. And I go out there and we're in like this really cool ravine in the desert in Anza Borrego. And there's like a little DJ booth set up. There's kind of like an area for live music, and there's a good sound system. And there's people that set up art, and there's all these colored lights lighting up the rocks. And just like 30 to 40 people having like a really good time. And I was just realized like people are doing this on their own. Like you don't have to like get a gig with a big production company or a big festival to start making art and music. You can kind of just you can just do it. And if you get people together, then you have a really good time doing it. Um, so after that event, I told Stacy that this was awesome. Like, I want to be involved with your stuff. And then she did a 2 night camp out in Big Bear. And I had an art piece that I had been working on. This would be, so yeah, so between that first desert camp out and then this Big Bear camp out, I hit that transition where I made the decision and I started practicing fundamentals. And then I started working on this project. And this goes back to the sentiment of the issues that you can hit when you have an amazing concept and idea, but it's basically beyond your skills and experience and materials. Um, so I was making this piece that was actually a collaboration for this workshop I entered into where a girl wrote a poem and then I was supposed to make a physical piece to represent her poem.
Cool.
And doesn't really matter what the poem was about. I The concept of the piece was a wooden painting, but it's a puzzle. So the pieces have to be oriented into the right orientation, and then you get the image. But they can also be put in other orientations, and you just get this weird choppy image that looks pretty cool as well. So there was like a backing for it that I made out of wood, and I inlaid magnets into it. And then in the pieces of the panel, there were strips. There were like 7 horizontal strips, and those had magnets in them. So you could like rearrange them and you could flip them over. And eventually, you could either make the puzzle or you could kind of make your own image of it. Really cool concept. And I am bringing that back, not actively at the moment, but that's certainly going to be one of the things that I have as kind of I think a staple in my um, just art business is these wall pieces that are rearrangeable. And so she had this Big Bird camp out, and I went and I brought it and I hung it up on a tree, and people enjoyed it, and it was really cool. And I also got a chance to DJ. There was just like a couple of DJs there, and one person had brought a controller with a laptop, and I was also getting into DJing. So I also had a controller, and I was running Serato. And there was a point where Phil is his name, had walked away from the decks for long enough for a song to end. So I just walked over there and like looked through his library, grabbed a song that looked good, and I played it. And then I just like walked back to where I was hanging out because I figured he was gonna go back, keep DJing. And he comes up to me and he's like, "Hey man, do you want to play?" So I'm like, "Oh, dude, really? Yeah." So then I get this chance to DJ, and this was one of the first times I had DJ'd outside of my house. Like I would play for the pre-parties. Um, I had this tiny little controller that I bought on OfferUp and a Microsoft Surface. So there was 1 or 2 times where I would sit shotgun in the car and plug the aux cord in to the output of the mixer, and I would be DJing in shotgun because the equipment was small enough that like I was doing that. So then I got to DJ this Big Bear camp out, and I brought this art piece, and people enjoyed it, and it was just like so pure and so like real and so much happiness. So then the next time I talked to Stacy when she was planning the following year's Big Bear camp out, I was like, I want to design the art for the stage, for the DJ stage. Um, and I believe I went to Lightning in a Bottle in between those 2 Big Bear campouts, but I could be wrong. But definitely the Do Lab, at least at Coachella, was a big inspiration for me wanting to build the art for the DJ booth. And I got a small budget from her, and I went and I bought plywood. I mapped out this design to cut the panels into certain sizes that could be layered on top of each other, and I would create this cool depth. Um, and then the idea was this cool abstract geometric pattern with fluorescent colors, and then we would light it up with a black light. And the way I did it was I got the 2 full sheets of plywood and I painted the pattern on the entire sheet, just like this cool abstract pattern. And then I cut it into the pieces. And I wasn't, I didn't meticulously plan out what was going to land where. It was just, I'm just going to paint this really cool pattern, a lot of tape, and then spray paint. Paint this really cool abstract geometric pattern. And I had exposed wood grain as well. And then I'm going to cut it into the panel sizes, and then I'll orient them whichever way I think looks cool, and then I'm going to assemble it. And that was like a really exciting project, and that was the real beginning of It's Stuff, which is my art brand. Um, Not certain if I had the name yet, but that was like the first piece, and then it was off to the races. Like, I didn't like climb a super steep, exponential curve, but I've had this really solid momentum of just moving forward into the spaces of the music and art world that I want to be in, that I can fit into, and like having my eye on the places that are next, and like slowly working my way to more and more like legit bigger events, but also like more underground stuff as well. But pretty soon after those 2 Big Bear campouts, we get into 2020. Um, so that's when it changed from me coming up with concepts and getting budgets and building an installation, which I did another one that I got to set up at the rooftop of Spin nightclub, which that was a really amazing experience for me to like have gone to this nightclub for a bunch of parties, and then now I'm getting paid to set up art for a party at this nightclub. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and then COVID happens and the entire industry shuts down. And luckily for us in San Diego, like people got right to it with the throwing their own events out in, whether it's Lake Elsinore or Hamul, there are all these different things popping up in the first, like, you know, probably starting in June. I think that was Sorry Not Sorry. It was in like June of 2020.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
yeah, and that's when, so it stopped being a profit thing. I mean, not that I was making a ton of profit, but there was no budget. It was who has art, who has decks, who has sound. We're gonna get out there and we're gonna like have a sick ass weekend in the desert, and everyone's just volunteering their skills and their materials and their equipment. Um, oh yeah, so I had done three. I had done the DJ stage for the Big Bear Campout. Then I did it was like a kind of a photo op backdrop for it was a party called Rooftop Roots, and Front Left Productions did two of those parties at Spin. And then January of 2020, Front Left, they had Andreas Henneberg coming out to play at Spin, and that was their biggest booking to date. And they wanted me to make the main centerpiece to hang above the DJ booth. And that was like the biggest honor to get that offer. Um, and that was when I built the heart piece, which is its official name now. I called it the Henneberg Heart for a couple of years, and now I just call it the heart piece. And that's like my, I don't know what it is, but that's like my original like gift to the San Diego art and music world. Like I did build it for a budget for the one party, and I had their logo in the center of it, but I used magnets because I knew I wanted this piece to be more than just for their brand. Um, and they were like totally cool with that. So I had their logo on the middle of it for the party, and then we took the logo off, and then I just kind of had it in my garage. But um, during COVID, these events started happening, and PG Squirt House did a big gathering out in where was it? Potrero, this beautiful spot. And I don't remember if I was asked if I could bring art or if I offered. I think I offered. And I had to build a stand for it because I hung it at Spin Nightclub, but I didn't have anything to hang it from. So I built a stand for the heart piece and I put it up, and it was, you know, behind the DJ. It was like 50 feet behind the DJ, and it was glowing, and everybody loved it. And um, it just felt really good to like bring it out and share my art with people. And then throughout COVID, there were more events along those lines where I'm bringing out tons of art. So I start bringing out that original DJ booth art from the Big Bear camp out. And I had added UV lights to it, and because it had the fluorescent paint, and I shine lights at it, but then I added lights inside of it, and then that became like the first PG Squirt House kind of DJ booth that we were bringing around. And then I got into and this is something we haven't talked about at all yet, is the vintage AV stuff. I had this phase where I was buying way too much old busted electronics just as I thought they were cool. And I would get TVs and TVs that work, and I can get these spy cameras, and I have vintage video mixing gear, and I would like set up this little viewing station where there's a camera on the DJ, and then maybe there's a camera pointed at the crowd somewhere, and then you're on this little TV somewhere else, and you can see what's going on in the DJ booth. And I just started bringing all my creative stuff out to these parties, and hadn't done any definitely hadn't done any live painting, and had done a couple of paintings just kind of in my own uh, time, where I just came up with a little process and I did some geometric paintings. I actually still have those 4 original paintings here on my wall at home. Um, and now I like cherish them as like these were the 4 paintings I did when I like first started, and they're cool. And I'm not going to keep them forever, but for now I'm kind of happy to still have them. Anyways, eventually going to the second Don't Trip camp out, which I think is the one that you were alluding to earlier when we ran into each other at a Renegade live painting,
Mm-hmm.
when I was live painting. So I remember getting ready for that event, and I was bringing out the heart piece. I was bringing out that I called it Synesthesia, was that DJ booth for the Big Bear campout. That was the theme of the event, and that was where I ended up. Wow, that now I'm realizing. Oh no, I was already doing my triangles, but the theme of the event was Synesthesia, which is kind of like shapes and colors and like seeing colors. I think is kind of what the definition of synesthesia is, or right, you hear sounds, but then you associate a color to it or something. So that I was bringing out that piece and the heart piece. I had built this bar with my friend Dylan, and we had the bar set up there. I had this really cool coffee table but it was a cooler. The base of it's a cooler. So that, it was like this coffee table, and then you lift up the lid and you got a bunch of drinks in there or whatever. And it had LED lights on the bottom. So I had been making these cool functional art pieces and coming up with these ideas and bringing them out to events. And then I had, seen a lot of live painters out at events and just decided, okay, I'm going to bring a wood panel out to this camp out, and I'm going to bring my paint, but I'm not going to make a plan. I'm just going to bring the stuff. And then when I find the right time, I'm going to start painting, and then I'll work on it throughout the weekend. And I still have that painting as well. And that turned out to be a pretty freaking cool one. It's like this eyeball with a spiral in the middle and some weird wormy psychedelic stuff around it. The first painting I did that I didn't use any tape, that was something I challenged myself to do, was to use the spray paint and use the brushes, but not use tape to create my shapes. And that's really where it probably culminated to, like, still an earlier stage of what it is now. But at that point, all the pieces had come together. I was building installations out of wood. I was painting creative, abstract, original artworks. I was DJing. I was doing the AV thing, and working a day job, and things were great. And it kind of just moves on from there. And I think we'll get into more of it as we go on.
Yeah, I mean, holy cow. Yeah, it's crazy how many parallels there are to the thing, the way that you got into electronic dance music. Like Coachella was my first festival in 2011, and I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was just like the size of it. I remember having a really great experience in the Do Lab as well. But similarly to like what you brought up about Crossed, is like being in the crowd, being with your friends, feeling the energy of the environment. Like the music was almost secondary, even though that's kind of why you buy the ticket. But then you get there
Right.
and you realize that, like, holy cow, I love this vibe. I love the people, and the music is kind of just the soundtrack to this experience. And obviously the music kind of elevates it, but then the people that surround you also kind of like take it to the next level. And then even just kind of finding your passion for art through music, and then just, I mean, it really is magnetic, the festival scene. And you go there once. I think for me, like, your Symbiosis was my lightning in a bottle. I went to
Mm-hmm.
LA in 2016, and just really had a really powerful experience where I was just drawn back to it, and I really wanted to dive deeper into it. And that's kind of how I got involved. Well, I think I got involved with EDM Identity the year before in 2015, but then that kind of snowballed a lot of my future endeavors. Um, started writing, started doing photography and all that kind of stuff, and then just really kind of followed it. I jumped headfirst into it, and it's been no looking back since. I've been trying to find the balance here as I've gotten older. It's been 9 years since I started writing, and I started shooting photos in 2017. And but yeah, like, it's, for me, it's something that I love to do, will always do, um, just because it brings me so much joy. There's nothing that can replace the feeling of you're so excited about those four paintings and you still have them. And I look back at some of my photos, of course, like, I was a noob back then, but like, I have so much pride in those pieces of work because it is a benchmark of where I
Yeah.
started, and I'm able to see where how much I've grown, and like where I have been able to travel to, and grow in my skill sets. But yeah, like, I had no idea. Like, and it's also kind of, um, to one of your other points, like, yeah, I wish there's so many times where, I wish I would have studied something else in college as well. But it's really cool how things end up manifesting later on in your life, uh,
Mm-hmm.
even if you didn't get involved at the time. when you look back on hindsight's 2020. But you studied construction engineering, and it's really cool to see that you are now that's seeped into so much of your art
Yeah,
years later.
I think that college experience, exactly as it was everything I needed to be doing what I'm doing today. I had a salary job for about 6 months, and I was just too young and too ambitious to be managing a construction project from the trailer. So I'm overseeing plans and I'm processing submittals and I'm walking out there to check on stuff and telling people that they got to redo stuff or change it or whatever. And I'm like, I want to be working. I don't want to be managing these electricians and these concrete guys, whatever subcontractors I had at the time. I was like, I felt like I didn't. I wanted to work for a number of years before I'm in a position of that kind of thing, and I wanted to be in the art and music world. Um, but yeah, let's move forward because I think we'll get into a lot of the stuff I could start touching on anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And I kind of want to keep this to an hour, so
Cool.
we've got about like 10 minutes left, but we can just kind of, get through some of the rest of the questions that I have here written. And one of the things I did kind of want to talk about, especially since we kind of have been touching on your construction engineering and, the way that your art has developed and the things that you are starting to do. I know that you and Mark built a vehicle for the Playa for
Yeah,
Burning Man, and kind of just wanted to know what inspired that and how the build went.
man, that is the project of projects. Mark is 100% the ideator of that. He went to his first Burning Man in 2022, and while he was there, he was like just thinking he wishes he had his motorcycle. It was the simple version of it. He was like, "Man, I want my motorcycle here." And you can't just bring a car to Burning Man or a motorcycle. If you have a motorized vehicle, it needs to be a mutant vehicle that gets approved by the Department of Mutant Vehicles. And there's safety, stipulations, requirements, and then there's visual requirements. It can't look like the base vehicle. They do a day permit if your car looks good enough during the day and passes all the things. And then they do a night permit. You don't necessarily get just both because if your car looks dope during the day, but you don't have any lights on it, no one's going to see it at night. And then it's really dangerous.
Yeah.
And then if your car is this really cool LED design during the day, it probably doesn't look very cool. So they want you to do both, where it's like it looks good when you see it in daylight, and then it also looks good when there is no daylight and it is its own light source. And you could simply build an art car that passes the day permit and then put lights outside of it enough that you just are lighting it up with some warm white light or something. Um, but yeah, that was a project. And he comes back from Burning Man, and I think he pretty quickly told me the concept. It was a rooster towing the chicken coop. That's the concept for the art car. So it's a motorcycle, and we put like a hitch port on it, and then ball hitch it to a trailer. And he already had this trailer, like kind of like a utility trailer that he got when he bought his Honda Goldwing that he already had. And then he, shortly after going to Burning Man, he goes and he finds a Honda Goldwing with 2 extra wheels on it. So it's like a trike, but it's more like training wheels. So the thing's sturdy. Anyways, we've got the bike and we've got the trailer. So we had to basically frame out the skull of the rooster and the walls and the roof of the trailer. And we found a group of people in Tijuana that could do the welding, all the metal work for a somewhat reasonable price. And we brought it down there and we outsourced the welding of the steel frame. And it took quite a bit longer than I was hoping for us to get those pieces back from Mexico, literally all the pieces. And I want to say it was April of 2023, maybe early May, when we picked up the bike and the trailer from Mexico. So we had like 3 or 4 months for us to do all the rest of it. And I had designed the wall panels for the trailer, but I couldn't start making them because I knew that the trailer, the frame dimensions weren't going to be super precise. And it actually wasn't, it ended up not being the specific design we asked for. So then, all my free time and a bunch of my credit card balance went to building that art car, and labor of love for sure. We were, working our asses off and getting ourselves hurt and, having a good time doing it and slowly but surely making progress. And I made it a point, at least with the trailer, to really make it something long lasting. I think it could have been slapped together in a short amount of time, and the weather over this past year would have totally ruined it.
Yeah.
But we got these redwood planks and planed them down nice and smooth and waterproofed the shit out of them, waterproofed the shit out of the other frames. And the panels actually bolt on to the trailer so they can be removed. And I have plans to add more and modify and update. So those panels will be removed again pretty soon. But shit, yeah, there were challenges left and right, and the only thing that like got it done was the fact that Burning Man has a date, and it starts on this date, and we know when we're leaving, and we're bringing this art car. So you start eliminating concepts and removing things that you wanted to do. Just start trimming the fat and getting done everything that you can get done. Of course, to pass the inspection and also have a really dope, safe art car. And yeah, I mean, it goes down to the wire, to the point where the last 3 days before leaving, a couple hours of sleep, like whatever burritos we're picking up, like my routine's out the window. I'm not cooking food, and we're just grinding, and we're making Home Depot trips, and we're ordering hardware on McMastercard overnight, and we're soldering LEDs, and we're like doing all of it. Like, seems like we're doing it all in the last 3 days, even though we've been working on it for a few months. And we still had work to do on the playa. We get out there, and we didn't even bring it to the DMV for inspection for, I think, 3 days, because we had a bunch of shit to do. And we got both our permits, and we had an incredible time at Burning Man. And I feel like pretty damn proud of myself for building an art car before my first Burning Man. And I owe pretty much all of it to Mark, because if it was me, like, I wouldn't have gotten started. Like, because it's a huge fucking project. And like I was saying, I'm trying to not take on huge projects that I'm not quite ready for. But he buys this bike and he's got this trailer, and he's like, dude, I need you to help me. Like, you're my carpenter. And I was like, okay. Like, I wasn't even planning on going to Burning Man. And then he buys this bike, and then I'm like, damn, well, I know I'm going to be helping Mark. Like, maybe I should think about going to Burning Man this year. And then it's like, okay, I'm like the main builder on the definitely on the trailer. Mark kind of was the motorcycle and I was the trailer, but we're both doing both, of course. And then I was like, okay, I think I'm going to Burning Man this year. And um, then it was just like kind of laser focus. I totally put my brand like on the back burner and was not producing any of my own art, wasn't really DJing. And it felt really good because I'm doing this passion project for this event I've never been to, but I've heard all these things about. And um, it was so worth it. And we're going to bring it back to Burning Man, of course, but we brought it to Courtyard here in San Diego. Mark Farina did a mushroom jazz set, and we got our art car posted up at Courtyard when it was like sold out. And we had a bunch of people in there like partying on the trailer, and it's such a good time. We're going to be bringing it to Desert Hearts this year. Um, yeah, man, that's still is, the biggest project I've worked on. And even after this next kind of festival season where we hit, stage two of the art car, uh, it's probably still only going to be in its early stages. That's kind of the beauty of it. It's like this living, breathing project that's going to grow and change and expand. Um, and there's just a ton of potential.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I mean, it seems like quite the big bite to chew or big project to take on. So really cool to see how it all came together and that successfully you got both the permits. Hoping
Mm-hmm.
to one day make it out to Burning Man as well. I'm sure it's a very inspirational place. I mean, I have tons of friends that have gone. But yeah, what a feat, and work on something like that with a good homie is
Yeah.
it's always such a
Yeah.
fulfilling experience.
Yeah, really good experience. It's great to work with a good homie, like you said, like bonding and just like feeding off each other, and we get into good workflow, and it's a good time. As much as it's hard work, it always pays off. And if you're choosing the work, it's enjoyable, like even when it's difficult.
Yeah, true that. Well, hey, shout out Mark Karen, the homie. It's been a while since I've seen
Corone,
Mark. Carone,
Mark
Carone,
Marone.
Mark Carone. Miss you, bud. But yeah,
He
what a
lives in New York now.
oh wow.
Yeah, he works for Billfold.
I feel like I saw that on Instagram, but I didn't know if he was just traveling or uh,
No, yeah, he's full time with Billfold. They send him out to events to kind of manage the system. So he was just at Envision
hell yeah.
for work.
Cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
can't beat that, honestly. Well, wrapping up here then. I mean, I know you kind of just mentioned you're going to be taking the art card to different events and stuff, which is super exciting. There's going to be many more iterations of it, which is also just really exciting. I mean, the world is the oyster for
Yeah.
this car. I mean, it can take on so many forms, and it's so cool that it's just really like a a continuous blank canvas, even though it
Yeah.
already has a shape and direction. But as far as like other creative endeavors or maybe just shows and stuff, like what do you have on your radar? What are you working on?
Yeah, so I've got the probably the first half of this year pretty mapped out. Up next is Carnival of the Arts. That's my birthday weekend in the middle of May. And I've already been accepted to live paint at that one. And my favorite thing about painting at that event is the live painters actually get a performance on the main stage during a certain act. So
Cool.
last year I did my performance during Band of Gringos, and I had an hour and a half on the stage, and I started with a blank wood panel, and I just went with expressionist, big globs of paint. I had some masking tape down, and I basically painted this whole abstract expressionist background during an hour and a half of this dope local rock band playing right next to me. and that was like the best feeling. Like I I'm so excited to do something like that again. So that's in the middle of May, and I'll be DJing there as well. And then, oh shit, before that, I'm going to Texas for the Eclipse Gathering in fucking like 2 weeks. So,
What a sick lineup
um,
that is.
yeah, not directly involved, but I am working the Luna Wild booth. So you know Ashley.
Oh yeah,
Um, I'm gonna go help set up her booth. So I'll be there before early entry, and then tearing down the booth after the last day. Um, that's that's gonna be a really good trip, really good event. I went to Oregon for the Eclipse Gathering in 2017. Pretty pivotal, transformational festival experience. And with everything that has grown out of my passions since 2017, I I don't even know what I'm in for Texas Eclipse, but I can't fucking wait. So I'm currently using all my free time prepping for that. And then in May is Carnival of the Arts. That's a really exciting one. And I'll be setting up my TV installation at an Umbrella Friends event in San Diego next weekend. And then I think next one is going to be Desert Hearts in July. So most likely nothing in June. So May and June, I've got two projects on the art car that I want to get done before Desert Hearts, which is July 4th to 7th. Um, got those. I already have a rough schedule, and I'm going to start looking at materials and finalizing my plans and, getting back to the passion project. And after Desert Hearts, I don't have anything scheduled, but there's a good chance I'm at Burning Man again this year. Kind of up in the air. I'm really looking at my finances, but good chance I'm at Burning Man again this year. And then same. I'm officially involved with Same Creators Club this year, so that's pretty exciting. For Viva Butt Vegas, the new theme for the Butt stage this year is Butt Vegas,
amazing.
and I'm going to be involved with the casino and kind of building some stuff for the casino, and hopefully doing another art installation there as well, with the vintage AV stuff and the analog live feed cameras. Um, Everyone always really likes that, and it fits in well at Same. And that's probably gonna be my year. Um, wow, I got Eclipse, I got Carnival, I got Desert Hearts, maybe Burning Man, and Same. Yeah, that's plenty.
Yeah. Wow. Well,
How about you? What, you going to any of those?
I mean, absolutely, I'll be at same.
Yeah.
Since I've been on this work contract, I haven't been able to get to as many shows as I'd like. However, I am going to Mustache Bash next weekend.
All
Not
right.
working it, just going to be attending, which I'm really excited for. It's just such a great party, also put on by the people that do Same. So, yeah, shout
Yep.
out Same and everybody involved with that because they are putting on some seriously fun events, and the whole vibe and community around that event is just fantastic.
Incredible vibe.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Have to go if you haven't been. Check it out. Bunch of great electronic dance music, jam bands right on a lake in Lake Paris. And that's in the first week of October now, I think. So, but yeah, besides that, I think the first event that I'm gonna be submitted for to work for EDM Identity will hopefully be Electric Forest.
Nice.
And then, yeah, that's in June, which is when I finish up my contract. Then, not sure what I'm doing in July, but then I got like Outside Lands in August. Um, and gosh, I haven't even really looked that far. Those are just ones that I've done pretty much every year for the last couple of years. I really love them and just really love photographing them.
Yeah.
We'll hopefully be able to get to some new ones as well. That is one of my goals this year is to check out some new festivals, and then to also kind of hopefully cross some fingers. Gotta put out some feelers, but to maybe go on some more short stint tours with some
Nice.
groups. But yeah, That's what I have. I think Electric Forest will be the first one, besides Mustache Bash, and then absolutely I'll be at same. Uh,
Like, yeah.
but yeah, I mean, for everybody listening, Blake is the homie, as you guys have been able to hear. He's got a lot of cool stuff going on, just really interesting background. I mean, the whole point of this podcast is for me to learn about people, but for also hopefully you guys have been able to connect with some of the sentiments that we talked about today. We have so much more that we can dive into. And I even told Kyle Lewis, who makes music as Carmulon, on my first episode, that we'll certainly have to do a part two,
Mhm.
because I feel like these conversations are always cut a little short. But you know, yeah, I just really appreciate you taking the time on a Friday evening, of St. Patrick's weekend, of all weekends,
Hey, of course, man.
to
I am doing it all for the art and the scene and the vibe right now. So I think this is the best use of my Friday evening. I've been working overtime all week. I'm working tomorrow, so I don't have a party to go to or anything. I'm gonna cook some dinner and go to bed.
Heck yeah. Well, I love the focus. Obviously, everything comes from where your energy goes. And man, I'm just so excited for all the things that you're working on. And it's been really great to just be involved and hit up festivals with you, and from afar see some of the things you're working on. And really just grateful that you wanted to be part of my podcast. This is the second episode. So yeah, I'm still bare bones, like I kind of mentioned earlier, but we're just running with it, and
Hell yeah.
just really excited for people to hear about your journey. And yeah, really hope that they've connected with some of the sentiments. Um, at the end of this, I'm gonna roll some credits, and
Okay.
make sure, if you're listening, your art page is at its stuff, at its.
Underscore it's dot stuff. Sorry.
Okay, sorry, you said again.
Unders underscore it's dot stuff.
Gotcha. Okay, and I'll roll it after this. But then also your DJ name at EOS, or what's the Instagram?
Yeah, so the Instagram is EOS DJ.
Okay.
EOHS is shoe spelled backwards. So I DJ as EOS. And my main Instagram is underscore shoe, which has links to both of those in the bio.
Perfect. Well, that's awesome. If you guys did not write that down or you're driving, I will roll the credits and you stop it and you follow Blake. He's the homie, and we love to support the homies. Thanks again, Blake, man, and I hope you have a good dinner.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. I was honored to be your second guest, and I'm looking forward to part two.
Hell yeah. Take it easy, man, and look
Hey,
forward
you too. All right, see ya.
to it.